the silence can be the most terrifying sound of all. That chilling hush that settles over a home when you know deep down you're the only one left within its walls. But what if that silence is merely a trick of the mind? What if, in the dead of night, you discover you're not as alone as you believe? Tonight we delve into the primal fear of being home, only to realize someone else is there. The shadow in the upper echelon. Alex, a 22-year-old, had sought the quiet independence of his parents' downstairs apartment. It was a practical move, a way to save money while carving out a semblance of privacy from the ever-present eyes upstairs. His domain was an open-plan space, a mini kitchen flowing into a living area, with his bedroom, bathroom, and laundry room tucked down a short hall, accessible also by a side entrance. Weekends, especially when his parents were away, were a liberation, a chance to shed the pretense of quiet and truly inhabit his space. One particular weekend, with the main house deserted, Alex embraced the freedom. His friends, Anthony and Jay, joined him, the air thick with camaraderie, the sounds of a hockey game and music blasting through the apartment. The night blurred with shared drinks, a comfortable buzz settling over Alex as the game wound down. He'd left the connecting door to the upstairs unlocked, a common practice when his parents were absent, knowing there was no need to worry about their sudden appearance. Besides, the larger upstairs fridge held the cold drinks they needed. With Anthony and Jay opting to crash on the sprawling couch, Alex finally retreated to his bedroom, the hum of the night fading into the promise of sleep. Hours later, a jarring sound pulled Alex from the depths of sleep. Footsteps. Distinct, heavy footsteps from the floor above. His first thought, a natural assumption, was one of his friends venturing upstairs for water from the bigger fridge. He dismissed it, pulling the covers closer, trying to reclaim sleep. But then, a new sound, closer this time, shattered his tranquility. The distinct, unsettling rattle of his bedroom doorknob. Someone was trying to twist it. It was locked, of course. Locking his bedroom door was a force of habit. A fleeting thought of curiosity, a whisper of why his friends would be trying to enter his room, flickered and died. Exhaustion won out. He feigned sleep, and the sound ceased. He drifted back into an uneasy slumber, the incident quickly fading into the haze of a drunken night. The next morning, the previous night's unsettling sounds were but a distant memory. Jay was still sprawled on the couch, Anthony already gone. Alex's question to Jay about attempting to enter his room was met with a bleary, drunken denial, a confirmation of their shared revelry. The day unfolded normally, a deli run with Jay for breakfast sandwiches, a casual parting. He didn't even bother to ask Anthony. It seemed like such a minor detail. The day was filled with other friends, a long marathon of activity that left him pleasantly sober, but utterly drained by the time he returned home late that night. A quick snack, a wash, and he was in bed watching TV, unwinding. The moment the screen went dark, the house exhaled, and Alex heard it. Creaks and thumps from directly overhead, eerily reminiscent of the night before, originating from the kitchen upstairs. He strained to listen, holding his breath until the sounds abruptly ceased. A cold ripple of unease, a nervous flutter in his gut began to spread. He sat upright, waiting, his heart thrumming a faster rhythm. After a few tense minutes, he dismissed it, a logical explanation whispering in his ear. Old house, settling noises, an overactive imagination fueled by the previous night's events. He couldn't have been more wrong. He should have trusted that initial, primal warning. The doorknob to his bedroom twisted again, a distinct, deliberate movement. This time, it wasn't just a turn. A soft, deliberate knock followed the jiggling. Alex sprang up, a jolt of pure adrenaline coursing through him. He stayed silent, his breath catching in his throat. Reaching for his phone, his fingers trembled as he began texting his family, then Anthony and Jay. He knew, with a sickening certainty, that his friends weren't behind that door, but a desperate part of him hoped for a reply, a playful, "Yeah, it's me." His parents, out for the weekend until Monday, were unreachable, surely asleep. The thought of uttering, "Who's there?" was a non-starter. He wouldn't give the entity on the other side the satisfaction. Quietly, he slid from his bed, seeking refuge behind the corner dresser. His hand found a blunt object, a heavy, solid weight that offered a fragile sense of defense. He imagined the door splintering, an unknown figure rushing his bed. 10 agonizing minutes crawled by, each second amplified by the throbbing fear in his ears. No more knocks, no further sounds. Finally, he made the call, whispering into the phone, the 911 operator, a lifeline in the suffocating darkness. He remained hidden, guiding the police to his bedroom window, a tap from outside confirming their arrival. Relief washed over him as he opened the window, handing over the key to the side door. Moments later, the distinct sound of his apartment entrance opening. He emerged from his room greeted by 2 officers, and together they systematically swept the small downstairs apartment. Nothing. Then, a slow, methodical ascent to the main floor of the house. Alex, in the hallway, called out the name of each room before the officers entered. It was as they pushed open the door to his parents' bedroom that a sudden commotion erupted, a flurry of shouts and movement. Alex peered in, a knot forming in his stomach, as he saw 2 officers yelling, their voices echoing off the walls, directed at something or someone hidden beneath his parents' bed. He was told to wait downstairs, the words a heavy weight in the suddenly tense silence. Minutes later, they descended, guiding a man down the stairs, tall, dirty, his face a mask of gaunt ferocity, shrouded in a sweatshirt and shorts. "Do you know this man?" they asked. "Of course not," Alex managed, the chilling gaze of pure hatred the man fixed upon him, a memory etched deep. He looked, Alex thought, like a phantom from the streets, lost and dangerous, possibly homeless, possibly unhinged, or perhaps both. Once the intruder was led from the house, the crushing weight lifted from Alex's chest, replaced by a wave of profound relief. The police left, advising him to call the precinct for follow-up. His first act was to furiously text every group chat, every lifeline. Only a few responded, the hour too late for most. The next morning, his parents were the first call, their awe palpable as he recounted the terrifying ordeal. Yet despite the fear, because the man was homeless and nothing appeared stolen, they chose not to pursue legal action. Alex often wonders with a lingering shiver if he had left the front door unlocked that night his friends were over, the music a beacon, allowing the man to simply walk in. Or, a far more chilling thought, perhaps the intruder had been there all along, a silent, unseen occupant for much longer than they could ever fathom. In the quiet confines of our own homes, we often feel the safest, but perhaps that sense of security is merely an illusion, a fragile veil that can be ripped away by the unsettling realization that the spaces we deem ours may, in fact, be shared with unseen, uninvited guests. We must remain vigilant, for the echoes of intrusion can linger long after the immediate danger has passed, forever tainting the sanctuary of home. The woods that watch back. Ethan had always sought the embrace of silence. 5 years prior, he'd traded the clamor of city life for a sprawling, secluded cabin in the heart of rural upstate New York. Here, the vast, ancient woods stretched endlessly beyond his property lines, offering a profound sense of isolation. The nearest neighbor was miles away, and the only sounds were the whispering wind through the trees and the distant occasional chirp of a bird. It was, he believed, a peaceful existence, exactly as he desired. Fishing was his sanctuary, the tranquil lake behind his house a perfect escape from everything. He thrived in solitude, genuinely relishing his own company. The cabin boasted a magnificent deck, offering panoramic views of the encroaching woods. It was his ritual, a cold beer in hand, watching the sun dip below the tree line, listening to the nocturnal symphony of the wilderness. Until recently, that peace had been absolute. 2 weeks ago, it began. As he sat on the deck staring into the deepening gloom, he heard it, the crisp snap of a twig in the distance, A deer, perhaps, or a raccoon, he mused, dismissing it as a natural sound of the vibrant woods. But as the days bled into one another, the sounds grew more frequent. Initially, it was just that snapping twigs, rustling leaves, the typical nocturnal symphony of forest creatures. Then, one night, a new sound pierced the familiar quiet. A distinct, rhythmic scratching. It emanated from the side of the house near the spare bedroom window. It was subtle, almost clandestine, as if deliberately trying to avoid detection. Ethan's heart quickened, a low thrum against his ribs as he rose from his chair, straining to listen. Nothing. Probably just a squirrel, he mumbled, but a cold unease settled in his gut. He retreated indoors, securing the locks for the night. The scratching returned the following evening. This time, it wasn't just at the side of the house. It was closer, directly outside the spare bedroom window. He froze, listening intently, his nerves fraying like old rope. Something felt profoundly wrong. He crept to the window, pulling back the curtain a fraction. The moonlight bathed the trees in an ethereal glow, casting long skeletal shadows across the yard. The wind was still, the night eerily normal. No animal, no person. He shook his head, chastising himself for succumbing to an overactive imagination, convinced it was merely a branch or the wind. He went to bed, a fragile sense of reassurance settling over him. But the next night, the scratching persisted, and it had evolved. Now, it was a light, deliberate tapping, as if someone were trying to get his attention from just beyond the glass. His heart leaped into his throat, and he was out of bed in an instant. Flashlight in hand, he moved stealthily through the darkened hallway towards the spare bedroom. He shone the beam outside the window, cutting through the darkness. Nothing. Just the same empty expanse of woods. Yet, the oppressive feeling of not being alone clung to him, heavy and suffocating. He returned to bed, but sleep remained elusive. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of the house, became a sinister symphony of imagined movement. Eventually, sheer exhaustion claimed him. The nights bled into a tormenting routine. Every evening, the sounds returned, the tap, the scratch, and sometimes a faint, disembodied whisper, seemingly emanating from within the very walls of his cabin. He tried to ignore it, but the chilling symphony was becoming unbearable. One night, a surge of defiant courage, or perhaps desperation, seized him. He would confront whatever lingered in his home. He grabbed a crowbar from the shed, a cold, reassuring weight in his hand, a crude weapon against the unknown. He eased open the spare bedroom door. The air inside was stale, unused for months. He swept the flashlight beam around the room, under the bed, behind the dresser. Empty. As he turned to leave, his gaze snagged on something. The closet door was ajar. He hadn't left it that way. His stomach plummeted. He slowly pulled the door open, the flashlight cutting into the darkness within. Nothing. But as the beam danced into the back corner, he saw a small, dark, torn piece of cloth snagged on the wall's edge. His breath hitched. Had someone been here? Inside his house? His mind reeled. He backed out of the room, his heart a frantic drum against his ribs. He slammed the door shut, locking it with a frantic click. He couldn't stay. He burst outside, gasping for the fresh air, hoping to clear his reeling mind. The woods, once a source of comfort, now seemed to press in, a suffocating darkness. He dismissed it as nerves, as the isolation finally getting to him. That night he slept on the couch, the baseball bat his only comfort. The house was silent, too quiet, as if whatever had been there was merely biding its time. The next night, a new resolve hardened within him. He would sleep in his own bed. He would not let this unknown presence drive him from his sanctuary. Just as sleep began to claim him, the dreaded sound returned. Tap, tap, tap against the window. He sprang up, flashlight in hand, racing to the spare bedroom, fear outweighing any concern for noise. This time, as he ripped back the curtain, the woods were not empty. A shadow stood there, indistinct, barely visible in the dim light directly outside the window. His blood ran cold. He turned, his mind spinning, desperate for answers. Who was it? What did they want? Denial withered. Someone had been outside. Someone had been watching him. He scrambled for the phone, his hands shaking so violently he could barely dial 911. The operator's voice was a lifeline, and he choked out his panic. Someone's been outside my house, and I think they're still here. He gave his address, and help was promised. He hung up, his gaze sweeping the room. He had to leave. He couldn't stay. As he reached for his jacket, a slow, deliberate creak echoed from the hallway. Someone was moving through the house. He didn't hesitate. He burst through the back door, tearing through the woods, adrenaline fueling his flight. He ran, lungs burning, never looking back. The flashing lights of police cars were a welcome sight in the distance as he reached the edge of his property. He slowed, trembling, hiding behind a tree, watching as officers, guns drawn, swept through his cabin. But he couldn't stay to know the outcome. Whatever or whoever had been in that house wasn't finished. He was no longer safe there. He hasn't returned. He called the police to assure them he was safe, to stop any search for him. The cabin stands, a lonely sentinel in the woods, but it is no longer home. Every time Ethan closes his eyes, he hears the relentless tapping. He may never know the identity or the motive of his tormentor, but one thing remains horrifyingly clear. They were waiting for him, and they are still out there. The illusion of safety and isolation can be a dangerous one. When the whispers of the wild turn into something far more sinister, and the boundaries of your sanctuary are breached, where do you run? Perhaps the most terrifying hauntings aren't from ghosts, but from the chilling knowledge that someone or something has marked you and waits in the shadows perpetually. The Uninvited Relative. 15 years ago, in 2008, a seemingly ordinary night for 15-year-old Sarah and her loyal black lab, Abby, turned into a harrowing ordeal. Her parents had ventured out to the casino, leaving Sarah engrossed in instant messenger chats and YouTube videos, the usual teenage pursuits. Around 11 p.m., the quiet hum of the house was shattered by Abby's frantic barking from the living room. Sarah, initially assuming her parents had returned, waited, but the barking persisted without the telltale sound of the front door opening. Growing curious, she rose and ventured into the living room. Abby, her usually placid demeanor replaced by an agitated stance, faced the windows overlooking the driveway, barking relentlessly. The darkness outside made visibility poor, but Sarah could discern only their single car, confirming her parents were still out. She rationalized it away a neighbor's car door, a loud vehicle passing by on their busy main road. She returned to her online world, but a growing sense of unease settled upon her. Over the next 5 minutes, faint noises seemed to emanate from various parts of the house, and Abby's barks punctuated the silence at irregular intervals. Just as Sarah prepared to calm her dog, a distinct knock or perhaps a rustling sound came from the living room door. Her heart began to pound as she slowly made her way back to the living room, peering through the windows once more. Nothing. The thought of looking through the peephole filled her with dread, imagining some horrific face staring back. She double-checked the lock on the front door, a futile gesture against the growing dread. As she turned to leave, a new sound, sharp and clear, came from the side door of the house. Her heart fluttered wildly. Was it her parents, locked out? Was it someone trying to break in? More than one person? Before she could process these terrifying thoughts, the distinct sound of the downstairs doorknob being shimmied with reached her ears. Someone was actively trying to open it. The basement, usually a hidden entrance requiring a walk around the entire house and under the deck, suddenly felt terribly exposed. Abby, now whimpering and barking louder than ever, dashed from room to room, a frantic blur, desperately trying to locate the source of the threat. The noises from the basement intensified, then abruptly ceased, as if the intruder had managed to gain entry. Sarah's heart sank, her breath caught in her throat. She stood frozen, waiting for the next terrifying sound. Then, quick as a whip, Abby tore down the stairs, a furious, maniacal growl rising from her throat. Abby, a good-natured black lab who wouldn't harm a fly, sounded utterly terrifying. Minutes stretched into an eternity of frozen fear. Finally, her fight-or-flight instinct ignited as Abby's growling stopped. Sarah called her dog upstairs, locking the interior door leading to the basement. She grabbed the home phone. Cell phones weren't yet commonplace for her, and with Abby by her side, fled to her parents' closet, where a gun was kept. Armed and ready, her finger hovered over the 911 buttons. Suddenly, the front door opened. Abby bolted out, a whirlwind of black fur, and Sarah instinctively yelled, "No!" But then, the familiar voices of her parents reached her ears. She rushed into the living room, finding them petting Abby, their expressions a mix of confusion and concern at her disheveled appearance. The next several minutes were a torrent of words as Sarah frantically recounted the night's terrifying events. Her mother was horrified, while her father, gun in hand, spent the next hour meticulously searching every corner of the house, inside and out. They found nothing, and Sarah spent a sleepless night, the echoes of her fear lingering. The following afternoon, a knock at the front door sent a fresh jolt of panic through Sarah, sending her instinctively darting into another room. Her dad opened the door to reveal her Uncle Pete, an envelope in his hand. Uncle Pete, a man notorious for his narcissistic and unsettling demeanor, had always made family gatherings uncomfortable. While never overtly illegal, his behavior around children and cousins was deeply unsettling, a creeping sense of unease that permeated any interaction. Even adults found him disquieting. Sarah, who played softball, often helped her younger cousin Kate, Uncle Pete's daughter, with pitching and fielding. From another room, Sarah and her mother eavesdropped, catching Uncle Pete's unsettling explanation. "I tried to stop by last night to drop it off, but no one was home, I guess." The rest was muffled, but moments later, her father's enraged slam of the front door echoed through the house. Sarah and her mom emerged, asking what had transpired. Her father, his face trembling with barely contained fury, revealed the shocking truth. Uncle Pete had been the one stomping around the house, trying to force his way in. He handed Sarah the envelope, which contained a thank you card and a gift card for her softball help. A night of sheer terror, orchestrated by her own creepy uncle. Her father had threatened him, ending their family contact. Looking back, Sarah finds some solace in knowing the identity of her tormentor. The alternative years of wondering if it had been burglars, a ghost, or something worse is a far more chilling prospect. She remains grateful for Abby, whose ferocity undoubtedly scared him off from the basement entrance. But questions, like lingering shadows, persist. What was he thinking? Why the late-night delivery? Why didn't he take the hint when no one answered the front door or simply call? And the most unsettling question of all, what would have happened if he had gotten inside? Sometimes, the most terrifying monsters are not found in the shadows, but among those we know. The discomfort we feel around certain individuals is often a warning, a primal instinct telling us to be wary. Trust that instinct, for the line between discomfort and true terror can be a thin one, especially when the predator is disguised as family.